Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on the pending departure of the Prime Minister. But first, striking back.
In response to the threat of economic pressure from a foreign government, even an historically friendly one, Albertans will decide our own destiny, free of coercion from any government.
Our Premier's response to American tariffs, announcing a number of Alberta measures, including AGLC, halting the purchase of American liquor and VLTs, a change in procurement processes to focus on Canadian and non-American companies, and a Buy Albertan marketing campaign. Joining us now, Mike Holden, Vice President of Policy, Chief Economist for the Business Council of Alberta. Mike, welcome back to Alberta Primetime.
Thank you.
How is the business community in our province feeling about the response of both the federal government and our province thus far, their approaches to retaliation?
Well, I think that, before we even get to what their approaches to retaliation are, I think that the main sentiment coming out of the business community is just uncertainty. I mean, you're looking at a chaotic, unprecedented series of actions that, it seems like every 2 hours there's some new information or conflicting information coming out of the U.S. And, for a business community that always talks about how it values certainty, what we're seeing here is so far an extreme opposite version of what they hope for, that it's a huge challenge. In terms of the actions that they're taking, I think that up till this point, the actions they've been taking have been fairly positive. On the federal side, we see this $30 billion worth of initial retaliatory tariffs, and those have been carefully targeted on things that either Canadians produce already that we have easy domestic substitutes for, or things that we can easily buy from other countries. And so I think that's a good step. And provincially, it's the same thing. I mean, the province has done, I think, a really good job of targeting areas where Alberta companies and Alberta businesses are not harmed and could potentially benefit from this in a way that slightly offsets the potential damage that a prolonged tariff war could have.
Our Premier on Wednesday again pushed back against things like an export tax on Canadian oil and gas, curtailing shipment of energy south of the border. Where do you weigh in on that as taking a stand?
Completely agree with that. I think that the big challenge with the tariff war or escalating tariffs like we're seeing right now is that nobody wins. I mean, American importers are going to be paying this tax, but that means that the prices in the U.S. are going to go up. That's going to harm American consumers, and it's going to harm the Canadian businesses and the Alberta businesses that are exporting to those countries. I mean, nobody wins. And a set of export curtailment, export tax, or even broad-based retaliatory tariffs, those are going to hurt Canadians and Americans. Nobody wins here, and I think that's the big challenge: is to try to find a way to respond that's forceful and decisive, but that doesn't come back and hit us in the other direction again.
In terms of looking for a win, your Business Council partnering with similar organizations across the Western provinces to form a coalition of sorts. What do you aim to accomplish in uniting as a group?
Well, I think that there are a couple of things we're trying to accomplish, and the main one, though, is that to try to magnify the voice of the Western provinces in Canada. And the work that we're doing to start this project off is really focusing on our valuable natural resource base. So whether it's oil and gas, agriculture, forestry, critical minerals and mining, or others, we have a wealth of resources here, and we think that there is a huge opportunity for federal policy to help enable the extraction, enable the value-added production, enable more research and development in these areas, and get those goods to market. And those would be important policy ideas and policy priorities, regardless of what was going on in the United States. But it adds extra motivation and extra urgency to us doing this work.
From a business community standpoint, what's the biggest hurdle that will need to be overcome in breaking down interprovincial trade barriers, and who needs to carry the weight of overcoming that hurdle?
Well, it's the issue with interprovincial trade barriers is that there are a collection of technical, administrative, regulatory differences across all the provinces. That's what most of them are. I mean, alcohol sales is a big one, but that's one of the few areas where there are actual restrictions on sales. And it really is just harmonizing mutual recognition of standards, making sure that workers who are trained in one province are able to work in a different province, And, it's really about the provinces and the federal government all getting together and all agreeing to make some progress on this. And I have to say that, interprovincial trade barriers, this has been an issue in Canada for decades and decades. And when it first started rising up as an emerging issue, or a re-emerging issue in the context of what's going on in the United States, I was actually a little bit skeptical that we wouldn't be seeing much progress, but I'm pleasantly surprised by how much progress has been made so far.
If we could maybe back to the tariffs, and the lingering turmoil, the lingering uncertainty, as you put it earlier, where does that leave the climate for future business investment in Alberta?
Well, that's the big challenge, and I think that that's why it's so important to be able to find a way out of this problem. Because I think the longer it goes on, the more uncertainty there is, the biggest risk is that companies are going to take, when their next investment decision comes in, where are they going to put that new plant or that new facility? Are they going to put it in Canada, where they might be subject to ongoing tariffs or ongoing uncertainty if they are large exporters to the United States, or are they just going to put that plant in the United States? And so I think that that's always a concern that we need to have. And I think one of the things we can do about it is making sure that refocusing federal policy and making sure that we have the most competitive domestic economy we can. The interprovincial trade barriers, that's an important step in here. But we also need to make sure our tax policy, our regulatory policy, our major project approvals policy, that we are as competitive a jurisdiction as we could possibly be in order to keep that investment here.
Mike, it's hard to escape all the talk of inflation and the likelihood of job losses should the tariffs remain in place for any length of time. How prepared then is Alberta's business community for a bumpy road ahead?
Well, they're making plans as best they can, and it really depends on which industries we're talking about here in terms of who's going to feel the pinch the hardest. Our calculations and our analysis suggests that looking at food processing, petrochemicals, some other chemical-related products, those are the ones that are going to be hit the hardest. And I think that they're making contingency plans right now. In some cases, they've been selling additional product in advance to the United States in order to make sure that that there's this building up their inventory and their stock. And it's such uncertain times that they're just trying to plan for the best.
Indeed. All right, Mike, we'll have to leave it there. Appreciate your time this evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mike Holden is Vice President Policy and Chief Economist for the Business Council of Alberta.